Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hello and good evening, good night to late evening to all of the participants who are at the different parts of the world. Welcome to the sixth IBA Entrepreneurship Summer School. On behalf of IBA Karachi, IBA Center for Entrepreneurial Development, I welcome Dr. Umair Shah, who is a faculty management Sciences at University of Waterloo, Canada. Thank you so much, Dr. Shah, for joining. I'll be showing a small presentation for his introduction. As you guys can see my screen, sir. Is it visible? Okay. Dr. Umair Shah is currently located in Canada, I think, or Toronto, and he has uh, joined IBA International Entrepreneurship Summer Schools for the last 6 years. He's been teaching different topics with us for last 6 years, and he is located at City of Waterloo, Ontario. He can tell more about the city because I don't have any information related to the Ontario. He has basically done his education from University of Waterloo. He has traveled. If pandemic was not here, he could have been here at IBA, and it took like 13 hours, 40 minutes flight from city of Toronto to Karachi. So I'm very thankful to Dr. Saab to be here and thankful to the Zoom as well that the distance has been shortened due to this platform. Last year he was a part of the fifth IB International Entrepreneurship Summer School 2020, and we had a lot of participation from different countries, as you can see, from Mexico, Australia, Zimbabwe, Russia, Thailand, Namibia, United States, Pakistan, Canada, and other countries as well. So you can see for the last 5 years, we've been having a lot of international participation for different parts of the world. As you can see from the map, we have invited a lot of people from different countries, and they are now successful entrepreneurs as well. Canada is a country in the northern part of North America. It has 10 provinces and 3 territories extended to the Atlantic and Pacific northwards into Arctic oceans. Its land about covers 9.8 million square kilometers, making it the world's second largest country by total. The population in 2019 was around like 38 million. Capital is Ottawa. Prime Minister is very famous and well known, Justin Trudeau, and currency is Canadian dollar. Mr. Umair Shah, you can have his information, contact information. He has done his doctorate from University of Waterloo in 2016 and Masters of Applied Management Sciences from the same university in 2011. You can see a beautiful campus of University of Waterloo. Dr. Saab has changed a lot. He was younger when he was in the university. You can see the posters. He was here in 2018, and before that, different programs that we at IBA CET runs every year. So thank you so much, Dr. Saab, and we welcome you to Pakistan again this year as well. And hopefully participants will enjoy your session. So I'll be giving you the floor. That is from my side. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Yeah, you're right. So looking at those pictures, I can see that I'm growing. So I won't say old, but I'm growing. So that's one thing. So let me just bear with me. Let me share my slides just a second, then we'll start formally. All right. Okay, so can everybody see my slides fine?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so like Asmi mentioned, my name is Umair. I work at the University of Waterloo. I've been living in Canada for over a decade now. I've been doing some research, I've been doing some teaching, some consulting work, traveling around, talking to students all around the world, and just learning from everyone. So my core interest is in management of technology. This is something that's very close to my heart. I think that there's immense, a lot of potential in terms of economic development, and also in terms of raising any country's GDP when you actually accelerate their technological space. So this is something that really inspires me. We use technology all the time. There's some good sides to it, there's some bad sides to it. So I always try to wrap my head around how can we keep improving the technologies, or how can we better manage the technological innovation in different parts of the world. And so my talk is going to be, it's going to be in a more of a discussion based talk. I don't want to just give you all the information. Rather, I would just inspire you or let you know about some concepts that exist in this domain, and then we can have a discussion, and then we'll see how you can apply them in your own ventures. So that would be my goal for today's talk. Like as we mentioned, I always this is the time when I'm visiting Pakistan. So I come to Karachi in August to attend this conference. I'm originally from Lahore, so that's another city in Pakistan. And then I head to Lahore to visit my parents before returning back to Canada. So this is something I've been missing in last 2 years. So last year I couldn't come, and this year again because of the pandemic. So first of all, I hope that everybody's keeping well. They're staying safe wherever you are. It's a different thing in every country. So I hope that everybody's keeping okay so far. Okay, so my talk is going to be structured in this way. I will begin with some introduction about stakeholder theory, some background on that. Stakeholder theory is something that is applicable to almost all sorts of businesses. It's a business theory, but I'm more so interested in applying it to technology organizations or technology ventures. So we'll see how this can benefit you, since you are going to be starting a business or aspiring to start a business. So the idea is, or the evidence or the scholarly articles that I read or I immerse in, they all tell that if you know about stakeholders in your own vicinity or whatever venture you're starting, you're going to be better off in the long run. So this is extremely important. And the ventures that do not do too well or they fail are the ones who do not take care of their stakeholders. So we'll talk about this, give you some background on stakeholder theory. Then I'll discuss business ethics. And business ethics can be different in different parts of the world. In North America, it may be differently applied, or the implications are different. The policies are different. The culture is different. Versus in eastern part of the world, or I would say in Pakistan, also in South Asia, it's different. In Middle East, it's going to be a little different. So we will talk about how you can fit in all these different theories about business ethics into your real life. How can we apply those theories? And lastly, I would just discuss, so what? So why are we going through all these different concepts? And there are certain things that I want you to be aware of, which are not going to be in my slide, but I'm going to talk about them. That right now in technology sector, there are some practices which are not the best, and how stakeholder theory can inform us to deal with those things, and what other scholars are doing right now. So if you're starting a technology venture, I would even say, even if you're not starting a technology venture, you would still have some kind of a online presence, right? So in order to tap the audience throughout the world. So if that is the case, you would still be required to know about what can happen online, what can happen in the technological space. So I'll talk about certain concepts toward the end. All right, so starting with the background, we all know that there are unequal opportunities for wealth creation throughout the world. There are certain sectors, there are certain countries, there are certain communities that do not have all the resources. I can talk about Pakistan, for example. In Pakistan, there are certain pockets where people do not have those resources. They don't have the formal education, or they don't have the skill set that they require to compete with any top organization in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that they cannot just start and competing and start developing something. In fact, what IBA is all about, or what CED has been doing, is phenomenal in this space. What they're doing is they're trying to reduce this divide of unequal opportunities for wealth creation. So, but this is a fact. You can all agree on that. That there, if you go to certain communities, you can see that there's not the level playing field is not there. So, what has been the role of academic research or the role of business innovation in this? Like I said, IBA, the Center for Entrepreneurial Development Program, under the supervision of Dr. Qureshi, Dr. Shahid Qureshi, has been phenomenal. So that kind of academic research, or that kind of academic background, can actually transform the whole space in order to level down the playing field for everyone. So I would give full marks to the academic research that they have been pointing certain issues out. For example, in Bangladesh, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, he came up with Grameen Bank. Forget about the criticism that we hear about Grameen Bank for a second, but when it started, I mean, that was a great innovation that gave a lot of space to people or poor farmers who had no collateral, who couldn't go and get any loans from the banks to start their farming or to start their businesses. Now, academic research has been good in terms of identifying these issues. Now, what has been the role of business innovation? Um, it's been also very good to an extent, especially in certain parts of the world. You probably have heard about concepts like social entrepreneurship. So there are courses being offered now. There are people who actually claim, who are the CEOs of companies, that they are social entrepreneurs. They're not just traditional entrepreneurs. And I'll talk about them in the next few slides, and what is the difference between these two. But they would say we are here to solve some societal problems. So the role of business innovation has also been good. For example, again, coming to Pakistani example of using Easy Pesa, or there are these products now which allow people who do not have like formal inclusion in the banking sector, who do not have a bank account, they can still transfer money using their mobile phone. And that was an innovative solution maybe 10 years ago. And there's so many others that are also happening right now, which probably you're better aware of. But also in African countries where the banking sector was not very formal, the similar kind of mobile banking started maybe a decade ago, and that kind of revolutionized the whole thing. So the role of business innovation has also been very helpful in alleviating the poverty issue in the world. Now, my main focus of the talk is going to be about business stakeholder engagement models. Why I think this is an important topic still. You'd be surprised, I conducted this research. In fact, I started doing this research in 2012. It's been what, 9 years? It's still very relevant. It's still very fresh. So these business stakeholder engagement models, what I mean by them is, let me just phrase them here. Have you heard about the term called corporate social responsibility? Maybe you can write this in the chat, CSR. Right, okay. Thank you, Irtuza. Anybody else who knows about corporate social responsibility, CSR?
Yes, sir. We do see there are a number of multinational and national companies involved in Pakistan. Right. They are doing CSR as well.
Right. Excellent. Thank you very much. So just like that, there are so many other companies that also use the term called creating shared value. So creating shared value is a model that Michael Porter from Harvard University, he's a well-renowned scholar there, who talks about value chains and creating value. So he actually coined this term back in 2011. He said, well, let's start creating value for all, no, not for all, but in fact, he said, let's share the value. So when you align your interest, if I'm a business, if I align the interest of my business with the interest on the community, I'm actually creating shared value. For example, I'm Nestle. I'm in the business of food. I have water bottle business, for example. I go to communities where water is scarce or where malnourishment is an issue. So I go there, I bring down my prices, I try and deal in the volume, I bring in the value for the communities that cannot afford it the way they can afford in a developed country. So then I'm aligning my interest with the interest of the community. Versus if I'm Nestle and I open up a school in a village or in some place, that's also a very noble thing. It makes sense, but that's not aligning the core interest of my business with the interest of the communities. Now, that's another stakeholder engagement model. The first one I said was corporate social responsibility. This one is creating shared value. Now, how both are different? So, corporate social responsibility is the one, if I'm Nestle, I would start up a school. So, it's not aligned, but I'm still giving back to the community. I'm still, from my residual profits, my extra profits that I've made, I'm giving back. Nothing wrong there. It's all good. But over the years, some scholars and some practitioners, they've actually raised the voice that maybe these companies are not doing a really good job who claim that they have the best CSR program. You'd be surprised. So how many of you remember or recall what happened in 2008 when the economic meltdown happened and Wall Street was in a mess and the whole Occupy Wall Street movement started? Exactly. So there were lots of layoffs and the whole world economy was kind of collapsing. Now, why it started or what was the triggering point? There was a bank called Merrill Lynch, or there was another one, Goldman Sachs. So they were the ones who actually went down, and with them, a lot of stakeholders, Lehman Brothers, sorry, not Goldman Sachs. You're right. Thank you. It's Lehman Brothers. So when they went down, everybody kind of started blaming them. That what just happened? Like, why were you giving subprime mortgages to the people who cannot pay the debt, right? So anyway, they further investigated, and scholars found out that they had the best CSR program. They were certified, ISO certified in CSR program. So that was kind of a criticism to the CSR program that, well, these companies are probably just greenwashing us, or this is a marketing gimmick rather than actually creating value in the society. So in response to that, in 2011, Mark Kramer and Michael Porter, they came up with this idea of creating shared value. Now that also gained a lot of popularity. Companies like Nestle, companies like Coca-Cola, they all started jumping on that bandwagon, and they started changing the name of corporate social responsibility program to creating shared value program. Now it gained a lot of attraction, but that's just the second type of business stakeholder engagement model. Now there's this third type, and that's a really interesting type. So while as a student of this domain, I was reviewing the literature. I went through the CSR literature. I went through the CSV literature, which is creating shared value. And then I came across this stakeholder theory or stakeholder management or stakeholder engagement model idea. And that was presented back in 1984 by a guy called Ed Freeman. And he's a Darden professor. He works at the University of Virginia in the US. And he actually wrote a book about this, where he said that in order for business to do well, and also for the community to benefit out of it, the business needs to align or to create value for all stakeholders, not just one, not just two, not just three, all the stakeholders that are working with that organization. And then he defines what a stakeholder is. So according to him, a stakeholder is any group or individual, just a second, let me just get rid of the chat. Any group or individual who can affect or is affected by the achievement of an organization's objective. Now, this could be your suppliers, your customers, your employees, your financiers, like your shareholders, your communities, your government, your NGOs, the environment, trade associations, social media. All of them become your stakeholders because they can affect you and you can affect them. So it sounds like, wow, this is common sense, right? But not so much. I mean, a lot of organizations don't follow this kind of method to deal with issues. I've seen that many organizations have started doing that now. there are many movements happening in North America, for example. They're called Capitalism 2.0. They're also called humanistic management. They're also called stakeholder-oriented capitalism or stakeholder capitalism. So they're actually moving away from this traditional 1% versus 99%. There's a lot of criticism, a lot of articles been written, scholars are talking about this. So this movement has started, and it did not start just now. It started maybe in 2010, 2015, it gained more momentum. And in 2019, October, there was this roundtable conference that happened in World Economic Forum, and about over 150 CEOs, top CEOs of the companies. These companies include Nestle, Coke, Unilever, all these big multinational companies. Their CEOs got together and they wrote a joint statement. And in that statement, they said, the coming time is all about taking care of your stakeholders. We cannot live with the notion of just creating wealth for our shareholders. So traditionally, how we train our business folks, or how we were training our business folks. I did a degree in business administration. So my undergrad was a BBA. So in that degree, I came across this notion that whenever I opened this finance book, there was this idea that the fiduciary duty of any organization is to create value for its shareholders who have financial interest in your company. Now, that model was a good model, but it did not perform that well. We have so many examples of that. Now, this new thing about creating value for all stakeholders, or stakeholder engagement model, or stakeholder capitalism, whatever you want to call it, it's about creating value for multiple stakeholders without trade-offs. So you shouldn't be creating value for the shareholders at the expense of your employees, or at the expense of your customers, or at the expense of your communities. Now, I can give you tons of examples. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to start by giving you a couple. We're living through COVID-19. There's a pandemic happening. And the companies that were just very narrowly focused on economic view, just the financiers or the shareholders, or the traditional model of taking care of the organization, did not do well during the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, look at all the airlines in North America. Not all airlines, I would say, especially airlines in North America. American Airline, Delta Airline, they were down under in 2020, starting 2020. So March, April, when 95% of the travel just stopped. So they plummeted. Their stock prices came down like anything. Now, what did they do? And they didn't have any money to sustain. So they were looking to the government to bail them out. And the government did, because it's a big establishment. The government cannot just keep them the way they operate. So they have to intervene. And that's a tragedy. Now, why they didn't have, they were doing very well in the last 1 decade. They made a lot of money. A lot of traveling was happening. But what were they doing with that excess money? So the CEO or the senior management of these airlines in North America, they were buying back their stocks. And why they were buying back? With the excess cash they had. Well, while they buy that back, their stock prices go up, because the demand and supply, obviously there's less supply, then more demand, there's going to be a hike in prices. Now, this was all artificial, but based on that, the CEOs or the directors made tons of money. They got best benefits, they got best returns, whatever. I mean, they got all that. Now, fast forward, COVID happened. Now they didn't have any cash to sustain. The prices of their stocks came down like anything. The whole valuation was just out of sync. Now, that's a problem. If you just narrowly focus on one or two stakeholders, you lose in times of crisis. Now, what happened to other side of organizations that were quietly aligning their interest with the interest of different stakeholders? For example, universities. I can't talk about all the universities here, but I can surely talk about my school, which is University of Waterloo. We were offering an online program way back. I'm talking about 1980s. They started the first online degree awarding program here. We have tons of online courses already. Our instructors were trained how to teach online. So the moment the pandemic happened, everybody took online. And the ones who were not even trained, the ones who were kind of trained them. So the whole community was ready. We had no disruption in courses. Maybe there was just 1 week off. I remember in March 2020, they just asked us to take a week off to plan our courses, port them online, and finish their courses. And since then, we have not returned to campus. We are working from home. I'm still in my home, but they're just starting opening now. So probably in September, we will go back for the first time after 1.5 years. Now, I'm very lucky that I'm associated with University of Waterloo. I still had my job, right? So otherwise, there's so many schools that were shut down. There were so many offers that were rescinded in the US. I heard all these stories coming out of there that in academia, there was this jolt, there was this problem there. But the ones who actually invested at the right time, quietly, with all the stakeholders, taking care of them, they actually emerged. They did pretty well. A lot of these tech organizations like Zoom, look at what Zoom was able to accomplish. I wish I had bought their stocks. I did not, so I missed on that. Look at all these technology companies, their valuation has raised like anything. So here's a comparison between a traditional way of looking at businesses, which is non-stakeholder oriented versus stakeholder oriented businesses. So my message to you here is, in order to do well, in order to continue or maximize the value of your business, is to just align your interest with all the stakeholders. Now, your next question could be, well, there are going to be too many. How can I do that? I'm a startup. And I asked this question to Ed Freeman. So let me just show you one of the things. So that's Ed Freeman. On the left, he and I, that's Academy of Management in 2016. And on the right, you see it's in Darden Business School. So I was very lucky just before the pandemic in 2019. I was there there were like 25 scholars invited for this program. And it was a stakeholder seminar where we presented our papers, discussed, had ideas to share about what's happening in the world. Little did we know that the pandemic is coming. Had no idea. And now we have a lot to talk about. Like, look, companies who were more stakeholder centric did pretty well. So there's no, lack of evidence here. So that's no brainer. He's, by the way, Ed Freeman, just want to talk a little bit about him. He's an interesting, very interesting personality, an interesting fellow. He's a musician. He's a full professor there. He's a top academic, I would say. He's an editor of Journal of Business Ethics, which is, he just stepped down, which is an FT50 top journal in our area of business ethics. But he thinks that he's a musician first. And this is his house. I visited, he actually invited us all to his house for dinner. And I got a chance to play in his studio, which was a privilege, and amazing studio that he had. So I asked this question to him. So Ed, what would happen to companies, startups, for example, who think they do not have too many stakeholders to take care of, or they cannot think of many stakeholders? Would they still have to go out and think about all the stakeholders that probably a mature stage organization would be dealing with? And his answer made a lot of sense. He knew that I was into music as well. So he said, Umair, in music, especially when you're playing blues, it's not about how many notes you play. It's about what notes you play and how well do you play those notes. And that kind of stuck with me, that's so right. It's not always about that you just start on a fret and you just keep going back and forth with all the notes. No, it's more about sometimes using the notes that resonate so well with the emotion. So replace notes with stakeholders. It's not about how many stakeholders you have. It's about what stakeholders you have and you do a good job with them. Now, I actively research in the tech space. in North America, in Waterloo region. I can show you what the region is all about. There's so many tech companies. We have Google in my city. We have Desire to Learn. We have Open Text. BlackBerry. Have you heard about BlackBerry? Well, unfortunately, it's not there anymore, but it's on our campus. It was done by one of our alumni in engineering. I teach in engineering. So engineering student, Mike Lazarides, he started that company with another co-founder. So BlackBerry is from University of Waterloo. So there's this tech culture. A lot of tech organizations are around. And I do research with them. I do research on them. I go and talk to the CEOs, directors, and all that, and provide consulting to them sometimes. And what I've found that these startup firms, they know very little about stakeholders, and not their fault. Not their fault. It's maybe the education system we have. They're, by the way, very skilled people, because if you want to start a technology business in a space like Waterloo, you ought to have a really strong background technically. You have taken courses, even if you're in arts or integrated engineering or those kind of places, you still have good coding background or technology background. So they are very skilled people. But the way we teach to them, sometimes we miss on this opportunity. And that's one of my own experiences when I was doing my undergrad studies. That was just very narrowly focused on just one stakeholder, that you have to create wealth for your stockholders, or the people with the money, or the financiers. Forget about the employees, forget about your customers. Well, take care of some customers, but not so much, right? So that's a bad business plan. That's a bad idea. So when you're starting a business, especially in tech space, there's an immense opportunity. I think the coming years are all going to be about bringing ethics in technology firms. Now, probably you've seen during the pandemic, or just before that, that Facebook CEO, you know about Cambridge Analytica, you know probably about what happened with Twitter. So there are a lot of controversies. What happened to Amazon? What happened to Microsoft? Their CEOs were just sitting in front of the Senate in the US and answering questions time after time, time and again. Why? Because the senators feel that something wrong is going on, that they are getting the information that they shouldn't be getting. So my message to you is, if you're in a tech space, you probably are better off taking care of stakeholders, like your communities, your environment. What's happening with the environment right now? There's so many active fires. Do you know in Canada, there's so many active fires. Now, I live probably 15 hours away from the place where the fires are happening. 15 hours of drive. It's not a short drive. It's like moving from maybe the northern part of Pakistan all the way to the southern part of Pakistan. But I can still see my sun and the moon being red because of all the smoke that's coming out. So just imagine the places where people are living there. What's happening in BC, British Columbia? That's a province on the west coast. We live on the east, and that's the west. It's burning. There was a city, there was actually a village that's 90% just gone. Now I worry about my next generation or the generation after. Maybe I can survive with this, I don't know. But what's going to happen to our next generations? Because businesses, they just did not take care of the environment to an extent. And you know what's going to happen? In the coming years, the insurances are going to become so expensive that's going to become non-viable for such businesses to exist. So then you actually destroyed the value of your business by not taking care of your stakeholders at the right time. So that's the message. So there are tons of examples that you can relate to. All right, I'm going to switch gears in the interest of time. Azmi, how am I doing with time? It's 30 minutes in. You said that 1 hour? Maybe Azmi's not here. Okay, that's fine. All right, so let me start by talking, and I'll take your questions after I'm done presenting this. Or if you really want to jump in, just open your mic and jump in. All right, so stakeholder engagement. Well, I'm now want to just give you an idea about where I live, what kind of ecosystem we have in terms of entrepreneurship. So this is the Waterloo region, which is 45 to 50 minutes away from Toronto. So Toronto is our main city. That's our main airport, international airport. But it's very close. It's like 45 minutes to 50 minutes away from where I live. And we are away from the US, maybe 1 hour drive. Niagara Falls is what, 1 hour, 20 minutes from my place. And there's this border there. There's another border close to it, which is 2 hours drive from here, which is the London, Detroit border. So they're not London, sorry, what is the city called? I'm forgetting the name. There's a university, Western, Windsor. Windsor is the city where the Detroit and Windsor border is. So that's like 2 hours from here. So it's very close to the US. It's very close to Toronto, but you'd be surprised the kind of community we have in Waterloo. It's very tech-based. There are 3 universities around. Highly skilled workforce exists here. Almost there's a joke in Waterloo region that there's something in the water of Waterloo, which enables people to start their business. So everybody is doing a business, and especially in tech space, we encourage our students like anything to go and commercialize their final year design projects or to commercial, and we give them some incubation space. We give them the skill to commercialize it, the legal cover that they can get, file a patent if they have to, and they don't have to share anything with the university. That's the best part of our university. Other universities, when they do it in North America, they actually take a share in their companies. We do not. At Waterloo, there's this motto that we say, or the tagline we say, whatever you create is yours, but we are going to enable you. We're going to help you in developing. So we have tons of centers, Velocity. I'm going to talk a little bit about the accelerator center. So if your company is at a stage which is a little more than just a startup stage, you want to accelerate now. So there are going to be some trained people there who can help you in accelerating your venture. Communitech is a government-backed, very like an amazing program in the city. It's partnering with the universities. It's open to public. Anybody could go there. They actually reside right next to Google's building. It's a very happening place. They just invite people to come in, get a space. They provide them with some cubicles, short, small team. But the push is that after a few years or maybe a few months, you have to move out. You have to leave that space for others so that others can come in, use that space and move out. Problem Lab, it's a very interesting lab. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then we have a degree program in entrepreneurship as well. It's by Conrad. They, I think, recently changed their name to School of Business and Entrepreneurship and Technology, something like that. But they used to be Conrad Business Entrepreneurship and Technology School. So it's a master's awarding degree program. And Waterloo Engineering, that's my home. We have tons of other programs in this area as well. And I'll speak about them in a minute. Now, let's talk a little bit about Velocity. So Velocity, it's leading entrepreneurship. I think in North America, they claim it's the biggest free entrepreneurial incubator and in the world. I mean, it's not just North America, it's in the world. It's an amazing space. They have their own building. They have their own residence for these entrepreneurs where they go and live. And they provide them with a resident who's a serial entrepreneur. And you can get knowledge from them. You can learn from their experience. You get the skill set that you need. If you lack in certain skills, they encourage you to go out and collaborate with others. They run these kind of, before the pandemic was there, I think this photo was taken in 2019, perhaps. I was just going to get coffee. There's this student center that we have. And during break, I like going there before pandemic. So it was happening just like that. So you would see these kind of events happening all the time. A lot of people just go and witness these emerging companies make a pitch to the angel investors. So angel investors are sitting at the front row, and there are audiences that are sitting at the back, and that there are judges also sitting there. and they provide some money to the startups or the winners of this thing. So about $130,000 were at stake on that particular day, which wasn't bad. I mean, I had a lot of fun viewing this. So I was just enjoying a cup of coffee there and just looking at what was going on and took a few pictures. So very interesting stuff. Now, I was very lucky to also look at their booklet, and while I was just going through it, I noticed something which was amazing. Look here, this guy is from University of Sargodha, and he was competing in University of Waterloo's velocity pitch competition. And I was very happy to see that, very pleased that this is an international consortium. This is not, and anybody and everybody could just go and collaborate with anybody to gain some experience. So it's a welcoming space. You are welcome to come and collaborate and compete. So it was a very nice thing to see, for especially folks who are in Pakistan. They would understand what I'm talking about. That this was very pleasing to see. There's another lab. It's called Problem Lab. And the focus of this lab in our university is to identify and understand the important problems in the world. These could be wicked problems. These could be high potential, beneficial problems that we can all benefit from. But the mandate of this lab is that not every problem is worth pursuing or starting an entrepreneurial venture on. Not every problem. Some problems sound very cool, very amazing. You want to start them, but eventually they're not going to give you the same kind of returns that you would have received if you focus on some real problems. So this lab just focuses on 4 or 5 problems. They identify them, and then they try and give the analysis to the entrepreneurs, emerging entrepreneurs, to go and start solving those problems. And they then also provide them with some seed money and all that. Waterloo Engineering, like I said, it's management engineering is my home department, or management sciences is my home department. Management engineering is our undergrad degree program. We have 3 specializations: operations research, information systems, and management of technology. I'm in the area of management of technology, and we give our students co-op experience. So by the time they've finished their degree, they have already worked for companies like Tesla, Apple. Almost all my students, they end up in these companies as co-op students, and that's before even they graduate. So they get tons of experience there. They also then apply that knowledge to start their businesses based on their final year design project. I supervise their final year design projects as well, like other faculty members, and they're trying to solve a real problem in the world. With COVID-19, I've seen a pivot. People are trying to resolve issues like mental health and all these issues, how to better connect online and all these things. They are propping up. So they are also trying to commercialize them. There's a short video here. You can also just take a look at it. That we have an advanced manufacturing lab. I think it's made by Ken McKay. He's a colleague in our department. All right, so this is an accelerator center. They have a dedicated building there. Entrepreneurs who work in this center, they're at a much advanced stage of just a startup, and they're accelerating. This is a picture of Communitech Hub. This is like next to Google's building. In fact, within the Google's building, old building, now Google has a different building there. But they have like in smaller spaces for everybody to come and meet. This is just a common area. This is not their cubicles that you would find to work in your own space as a startup. This is Conrad Business School. I still remember my professor when I was doing my PhD was also cross-appointed here. So we had many meetings in the room behind this. So just a nostalgic thing. All right, so there were a few slides that I missed. In fact, I skipped. I want to just go back to them. So everything is clear to you in terms of what stakeholder engagement model is, or what creating shared value model is, or what corporate social responsibility model is. The only difference is that you should not be just looking after a few stakeholders. The criticism of creating shared value or corporate social responsibility is that they're doing a good job, nothing wrong there, but they're not doing enough. It's falling short. But there's another model, which is a better model, which is creating value for all stakeholders. And that's a model that is also something very close to the Islamic principle. When I was studying this, I was like, wow, this is very similar. There's a lot of similarity in how you deal with your suppliers. Like I said, I'm from Pakistan, and while I was there, maybe things have improved now, but when I was working, I started my first job, and I noticed one thing: suppliers are not treated well. They are the last ones to get the pay, and they're the first ones to give the raw material to the companies who are building something. So the treatment is not fair, and that's against the principles of Islam too. Like there's this saying of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which states that you have to pay the person before the sweat is also dry, for the services that person has rendered to you. So you have to like make sure that you give the person their due, you help them out in a fair way, right? So that's very close to being a stakeholder oriented person or stakeholder oriented venture. Now, stakeholder theory, there's this criticism that maybe it's not a theory, it's a framework. And I'm fine with that. And Ed Freeman probably is also fine with that. What that means is that you should, as an entrepreneur, you should have this hat on, the stakeholder hat on. You should, when you make a mistake, you go out and solve that problem. You do the right thing. Now, one example that comes to my mind, I've given this example previously as well, but maybe this would be new to you. Keurig cups, K cups. How many of you know about the coffee pods that you find, the coffee machines? If not, I can maybe show you that in my kitchen. So there's this machine. There are these coffee pods that go in it, and you just brew the coffee out, right? So that's one way of making really good quality coffee. Now, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, multi-billion dollar. It started back in, I think, a decade ago. It gained a lot of popularity, but interestingly, there was this pressure group, or I would say a civil group, civil rights, well, not civil rights, but an NGO kind of a group. They started criticizing K-cups. Why? Because the pods that they were developing, they were not biodegradable. They were going in the landfill, and they were just adding to the pollution, right? So the CEO of, or the co-founder of K-cups actually apologized publicly after a few years of making billions of dollars and said, quote unquote, "I'm sorry that I created this thing." And the interesting thing was, he said that I wanted to create something that was going to help the environment. How? He said there was this scarcity, there was this need for getting a coffee in your office spaces, a reasonable or a good quality coffee in your office space, for you not having to drive all the way to Starbucks or Tim Hortons or all these coffee shops and come back with the coffee. So he created this pod that you can have a really freshly brewed coffee in your office space. Now, the intention was good, but it actually did the wrong thing. It actually did the opposite thing. It created an like the problem for the environment, and that had an economic hit. So later I found out, I was reading another article, they actually hired a chief sustainability officer and to deal with this. And now I have to show you this. Just bear with me. Just a disclaimer, this is not K-Cup, this is Nespresso, and they have a different thing. But I'll tell you, this is what the pod was about. So how I recycle this. Nespresso, for example, there's this company, and they've given me a packet where I'm just storing all these pods. So when I go to their shop to buy more pods, I just return that package to them. And they're the ones who are going to just take out this filament. They're going to take out the internal film, and then they're going to throw it for plastic recycling. Otherwise, if I throw it like this in recycling, it's not going to be recycled. It's going to break the machine of recycling. Do you believe that? What kind of consequences such a small thing and these things have? Now imagine if I drink, let's say, 2 cups or three mugs a day, and they're like, everybody starts doing that. Imagine the kind of volume we're producing. So it's a problem, but they're trying to find a way around it to deal with this. So long story short, when you create your businesses, ventures, think through all these different problems, and you create something that's going to help your community, your environment, your ecosystem, your, most importantly, your customers, your employees, your suppliers, your financiers, communities, and all the other stakeholders that you can think of. So in last few minutes, what I would say to you is, when you're deciding on how to start your venture, think about a few questions, like what kind of value I'm going to be creating for all these stakeholders, or am I going to destroy some value for any of the stakeholders? What kind of actions can I take to maximize the value for my stakeholders? So this is kind of purpose driven thing versus profit driven thing. So always go for the purpose, why you started that venture, what was the problem that you were solving. So if you have this hat on of stakeholder engagement, chances are you're going to do a good job. If not, then maybe in a few years you will also be apologizing to somebody. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I think I maintained the time, I kept the time well. Now the floor is open for your questions, and I can
some people have questions on the chat box. If
Sure, let me open that. I actually closed it because I'm working on a very small screen today. All right. Wenjun Meng asked, I have a question to ask. I don't seem to be on the teacher list because I can't open the link that the teacher asked us to fill, or open WhatsApp. I can see the information. I think that's more of admin related question.
that is admin related. Anyone has a question, can they can ask, or they can type on the chat box.
Yeah. Hi Hans, good to see you.
Good to see you. Missing our wonderful conversations in Pakistan. So now it's the second year that we don't meet. So I hope we will meet next year. And I truly hope that I can bring some Stanford students, maybe from this course, or other Stanford students to Pakistan, because I think this would be really a great addition. Yeah, so great to see you.
Excellent. Likewise, Hans. I'm looking forward to next year now.
Yeah. Sir, we have a question on the chat box.
Sure. Can you recommend a tool to work upon so the entrepreneurs are able to consider it while planning for strategy? There are multiple tools you can use. Start with the Canvas. What is it called? Value Canvas. Let me find out. I think it's in one of my slides. Osterwalder created that.
Business model canvas.
Business model canvas. Yeah, that's the one. That's one of the tools. There's also the stakeholder map that you can find on internet. Just Google stakeholder map. And what it does is it creates a wheel around the firm. Your firm is going to be in the middle, and then there are all these stakeholders around it. And then you can think about how you can create value for each of them. There's also an activity that I used to do in my courses, and also when I'm providing some consulting. You go to your stakeholders, or you actually make them imagine that what if tomorrow companies like Apple, whatever is the best company in your sector, just imagine that company wants to work with you. Can you think of how you can create value for them? And then think about how you would anticipate creating potential problems for them based on the product that you have. Just anticipate those, and then try and figure out how you can eliminate the problems and maximize the value, and how you can do it on a repeated time. So these are some tools that you can use, which can really help the conversation start and make you identify certain stakeholders.
Dr. This is Mohammed Umar. Can I add some observation?
Sure. Yeah.
Actually, what I have heard from a saying that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from poor judgment. For the past 70, 80 years, we have seen the world has ruined, the mankind has ruined the ecosystem, the climate, everything. And the worst 40 cities in the world which are most polluted, 37 are from South Asia. And I firmly believe that the way they have poorly industrialized these South Asian countries, they have ruined the ecosystem, etc., etc. And what I assume that from your talk that most of the business concerns, startups and the corporates whatsoever, the major issue is you are going to start business and making profit, but you cannot compromise the environment, the community, the climate, etc., etc. So I mean, compared to starting a business 50 years ago, 30 years ago, we have more responsibility and concerns regarding doing the business in today's world.
Absolutely, this is very true. But I always say that look at what, for example, China did. They had a really big problem with the pollution, right? So in Beijing, a huge issue. They created policies. They understood that this was a problem. The problem with most of the South Asian countries, or particularly in Pakistan, because I'm from there, I visit there every year. My whole family lives there. Is that nobody identifies, or very few people identify that as a problem. Unless until you think it's a problem, you would do something about it. If you think, though, it's how things are, who cares? What can I do? I'm just one person. So if that attitude is there, then obviously nobody's going to fix it. So it has. You're right. It's the future is going to be very brutal. I mean, time does not give anybody a chance, right? So it's you better be on the right side of time. So otherwise you're going to be penalized heavily. So my message really to all the young entrepreneurs, especially in Pakistan or Southeast Asia, or in Thailand, in Malaysia, in these places, there's immense opportunity. There's immense opportunity. If people are not doing the right thing, you do the right thing, and then your business is going to be integrated, and then you're going to create real value. Then you're going to be noticed. You're going to have a strong story. You're going to have better marketing. um, Conscious buyers are going to look at you. They're going to come at you, and that's what started the whole movement of conscious capitalism in North America. It started with a few. You know what Ed Freeman did? I was, it was funny. It was August when I visited them. And he showed us a video of Michael Jensen. Now, Michael Jensen is the guy, Harvard professor, who came up with this shareholder theory. And his theory is the theory that I was talking about, that the fiduciary duty of any organization is to create wealth for shareholders only. Now, Michael Jensen, after getting retired, after completing his whole academic career, he sat down with a videographer, made a documentary, and said, "Oh, I got the idea wrong. I think Ed Freeman is right. Stakeholder engagement." And you know what? Ed was sitting right in the room and he said, "Yes, yes. It took me 30 years to make people come to this point." Because he wrote a book in 1984 and I could see what he meant. And just after that, in October 2019, just before the pandemic, this World Economic Forum happened, and 184 CEOs signed this joint statement that the future is going to be about stakeholders. We cannot continue serving the shareholders only. That was the statement. And Ed, he's on my Facebook, he's on my LinkedIn as well. He shared this, that it took me over 30 years to make the world realize that it's a problem and there's another way to look at businesses. And it takes time, but it just takes persistence. You have to start. Now we are all talking about that. Dr. Shahid Qureshi talks about that. Hans probably talks about that. Whoever is teaching this kind of material talks about that. So that message is now spreading. It's a good message. It's a message that you should apply first. So it doesn't matter how many stakeholders you have. It doesn't matter how many notes you play. It's what notes you play. So these are certain things that you should keep in mind, This is a stakeholder engagement or foundation hat or this framework hat that you need to keep wearing in order to look at the world. Otherwise, we're going to lose again. So
Yes.
are there any questions?
Sir, we have a question from Irtiza. That would be the last question for the session. Irtiza, can you ask, please?
Yeah. You said that Waterloo is more of a innovation hub in Canada, and then you also emphasized that there are a lot of people with technical background there. So as someone who has been in the tech space without a technical background, can you just elaborate a little how difficult it is for non-technical background people to start a tech-related business nowadays?
It's not too hard. I've seen tons of people. Oh, I know one guy. He has an undergrad in arts, okay, and he he did a master's in Conrad, entrepreneurship masters. He started working on his startup. It was a SaaS-based business with two other friends, and they're all class fellows, and it was a tech-based startup. He did not have that kind of capability to code himself, but he hired people. Two of his partners, they were very technical, but he was good at understanding the human side of things. And you know what he's doing right now? He's the top guy in cryptocurrency that I know. He is working with Citibank. He is right now in Singapore. He started in New York. He's in Singapore right now. And just recently, he moved to Abu Dhabi for a very technical venture, and the government is supporting him. He's Canadian, like he's Caucasian Canadian, very close guy. I know him very well. I know whole his family. Not technical at all, but look at what he's doing. He's extremely technical. Now, my message to you again here is, don't think that this is technical. I'm never going to do. Then learn some technical skills. there's nothing stopping you, right? At whatever stage you are, even if you are a post-education kind of person, if you think, I'm not going to go back to school, well, learn some technical skills from Coursera. Learn something from other places. There's so many free places right now. Take some courses. So add those skills to you. They're going to help you and develop more. But the other side is, okay, so this was one thing I wanted to discuss, but I did not have the time. Things like algorithmic transparency. If you can write this down, please do. Algorithmic transparency. Things like dark patterns. They're taking over. These are ethical issues in technology spaces. For example, if I just signed up for Facebook, oh God, it's a real pain to delete that account. I cannot, right? So it's so hard to even turn off the notifications and all that. So there's this argument that they deliberately make these things hard so that you don't move away from their platform, right? And they understand your psychology better than others, so they keep you hooked. So they give you all these notifications all the time, feed you with them, right? So that you're stimulated, your dopamine is releasing all the time. So if you understand psychology, you're going to be like, wow, they're playing with our heads. And they are, because they want the more time you spend on their platform, the more money they're going to make. They don't care whether you do something or not. They just want you to be on their platform. So Twitter is doing that. There are all these other, many other examples. So when you're starting this kind of business, if you understand the humanistic side of things, don't call yourself as a non-technical person. You are a technical, you understand humans, right? So forget about if you don't know the coding, but you know the psychology. I wasn't a technical guy when I left Pakistan. I was, like I said, I had a business degree. I wasn't from computer science background, but look where I ended up. I did my master's in management of technology from Faculty of Engineering in University of Waterloo. So that's the power of having cross appointments and working interdisciplinary research. I actively collaborate with people from computer science. I work with professors in business. I work with professors in user design. There's a very close friend of mine. His name is also Umair. He's also from Pakistan. He's an assistant professor in Wilfrid Laurier University, which is a very good university in Canada. He and I collaborate a lot on research projects. He is a user design experience, but he's in liberal arts. So he has that background. He's from systems design engineering. So we do that all the time, and that's the whole fun part, right? So don't think that you have just one specific thing and you just have to stick to that. No, just go out and get all those skills. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Umair, for your time. And I think he has the participants has enjoyed the session. It was very informative, and we will provide them with the video recording of the session as well right away. So thank you so much. And
it was a pleasure, and I look forward to physically coming to Pakistan next year, hopefully.
Yeah, inshallah, if the pandemic situation is over, we will call you to Pakistan, because it's already 2 years that we've been doing this entrepreneurship of summer schools online, as well as the winter school. So we'll be glad to have you here in Pakistan, and Hans as well. So he will be waiting to come to Pakistan. And if anyone would like to join us from Thailand, they are most welcome to do that. And we will arrange all the visas if they want. So thank you so much, sir, for your time.
All right, take care, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Bye, Hans. Bye, everyone. Say hi to Dr. Qureshi. I'm probably going to be meeting him on Thursday. So we'll talk again.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm going to close the session right now. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.